Okay, well done. And we're back on the other side here. So, which of the following statements is correct for A? It is, for question 1, it is A. Question 2, it is C. So we know that sensory memory stores in its original sensory form. So if it's something that you see, it would be stored as an image. For question 3, the answer is D. So this is the incorrect characteristic because the capacity of sensory memory is unlimited, sorry. And for question 4, the answer is C. So 5 to 9 items. So for question 5, why is sensory memory beyond conscious control, but short-term memory is under conscious control? So short-term memory requires attention consciously to give things meaning, whereas sensory memory has no conscious control. Otherwise, we would be overwhelmed by all of that incoming data and information. So by controlling short-term memory via selective attention, we're able to focus on stimuli that's important and ignore things that aren't important to us. For question 6, explain one reason why short-term memory has a limited duration. So short-term memory has a limited duration because there is a constant stream of information entering it, so that we don't miss any new information and anything that it is important. And an example of that is for those, shout out to my Macca's workers, woohoo! When taking an order at a Macca's drive-thru, if the first car orders a McChicken meal, that information then needs to be removed so you can clear your short-term memory and work through the next car who might order a cheeseburger meal. And that information is there for just enough time to serve each of the customers and then be out of the way. Question 7, explain how sensory memory helps us adapt to our changing environment so that our survival chances are enhanced. So coming back to those biological underpinnings that we are all about survival and that idea where organisms trying to survive, sensory memories have an unlimited capacity so that we can receive all important and potentially dangerous information from our environment. So if we need to pay attention to it, that it is there for us. So we've got another bunch of questions to complete. So pause the screen again and have a go at these 3 questions. Okay, so for question 1, distinguish between sensory memory and short-term memory with reference to conscious awareness. So sensory memory, so we don't have conscious awareness of what's stored in there, whereas for short-term memory, we do have that conscious awareness of information that is stored there by paying attention to it. Explain why short-term memory can be described as the seat of consciousness, but neither sensory memory nor long-term memory can be described in this way. So your explanation should have something to do with short-term memory holding all the information of which we're consciously aware at any point in time. So this is the place where all of our consciousness in terms of perceiving, feeling, thinking and reasoning are taking place. So we're not consciously aware of any information in our sensory or long-term memory. And short-term memory also enables us to consciously combine and use information from those 2 bits. Explain why information transferred from sensory memory to short-term memory is considered to be an encoded version of that information. So your explanation should demonstrate something in terms of understanding that information must be neurologically changed in some way in order it to be represented and stored in our short-term memory. Last 3 questions, pause again and have a go at trying to answer them. Why is short-term memory called working memory? So the emphasis on that active part of our memory. So whereas sensory and memory and long-term memory are considered passive. So it kind of overlaps with the previous questions, but really to get that point across. Where information can be brought into our conscious awareness and temporarily there so it can be worked on for a short period of time while we undertake everyday tasks, and the fact that it is our workspace for cognitive activity. In what 2 ways is information most commonly lost from short-term memory? So they can be lost through a decay, and we're going to look at forgetting next week. But this is so just through disuse. So we've spoken about use it or lose it, Hebb's rule, and displacement. So when pushed out to make room for new information. So you walk from one room to another room and pick something up. When you arrive, you have forgotten why you went into the room. You realise you were thinking about something else, and this made you forget the reason for being in that room. Explain why this forgetting occurred in terms of short-term memory capacity and duration. So generally, when we think about something else, new information has entered short-term memory and displaced the information that needed to be picked up while we were thinking about something else. The required information was lost or faded through disuse or the lack of rehearsal in there. So that goes back to the idea of the short-term memory capacity, that it is 7 plus or minus 2 items of information. So thinking must have comprised enough items to have exceeded the capacity. So it must have been too big and exceeded that capacity. And the duration. So given that it has a storage duration of roughly 18 seconds, the reason for going to the room would not have been thought about or rehearsed for at least this long and might have been lost through disuse.